I'm 28 and babysit on the weekends to make some extra cash. There's this one family that I should have phased out by now, but the kids are cute and I don't have another job, so it's easy money. My issue is the mom is never home on time. She used to not give me return times, but I finally started asking as it made it impossible for me to get anything done on the weekends. I'd go babysit so she could have brunch, but she'd be gone from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. My whole day was gone. After that, she'd start giving me times but never stick to them. She wouldn't even call to tell me, she'd just stay out. On Saturday, I got to her house at 6 and she was supposed to be home by 9. I told her that she needed to be home on time because I had plans to go out with friends. I was even getting ready at their house after I put the kids to bed. She promised. Of course, 9 rolls around and she's not home. I call her, no response. Text, no response. Another hour. Still nothing. I was still calling and texting. Finally, it's midnight. By this point, my plans are long ruined, but I'm pissed and exhausted. I call her and leave a voicemail saying that if she's not home in the next hour, I'm considering the kids abandoned and calling the cops. I also texted her this. I try calling her 30 minutes later and it goes to voicemail on the second ring. I text her again and she leaves me on red. If she had reached out saying, hey, I'm staying out until X time, I would have stayed. I don't know any of her family nor the father of the kids, so I can't call them. I gave her a grace period of 15 minutes and tried calling again, and finally called the cops, the non-emergency line though. They showed up and I showed our agreement in text from earlier in the week confirming that she'd be home by 9. They tried contacting her, didn't answer. I was dismissed and they took the children to the police station. I go home and go to bed. I'm awoken at 3 a.m. by a frantic call. It's her. Where are the kids? Why am I not here? I told her that I followed through with my threat and to check the police station. She cursed me out and I hung up and went to bed. The next day, she sends me an essay saying the kid's father called and there's a DCF investigation launched against her. She called me every name under the sun, but I didn't think I was wrong until I spoke to a friend with kids. She said I should have waited it out and refused to ever sit for her again. She asked if her potentially losing her kids was worth me being petty. Am I the asshole for calling the police on my client?
Storytime about how I'm hooking up with my boss's husband. Let's get this out of the way. Yes, I'm a homewrecker. Am I proud of it? No, but just hear me out. A few years ago, I had moved to a new city and didn't have any friends at all. My goal was to get a job and make some new friends. Luckily, I got a job right away. After working there for a few weeks, I noticed that my boss would get really jealous anytime her husband would come into the store. Here's the reason why. Her husband is super attractive. He's like way more attractive than she is. Anyway, there were a bunch of girls that worked at the store. I wasn't the only one. But it was like some kind of unspoken rule that you never spoke to the boss's husband. After a month of working there, I would avoid him at all cost. But here's the thing. He actually would go out of his way to come say hi to me. At first, I thought this was flattering, but then I realized I could be playing with fire. So I decided to be really cold towards him. Well, this didn't work because it actually made him want to talk to me even more. A few days later, I get a text from an unknown number. Can you guess who it is? Yep, it's my boss's husband. In the message, he basically said that if he had done anything wrong to let him know because he didn't want me to feel uncomfortable around him. That's when I told him that none of the girls at the store were allowed to talk to him or even make eye contact with him. And that was the reason why I didn't speak to him. He told me that I must have misunderstood because he's friends with all of the girls who work there, which I knew was not true. The next day I go into work and he actually shows up at lunchtime. I was by myself at the store. It's like he almost knew that I was there by myself, so he decided to come over. And he started flirting. He pretty much complimented everything about me and asked me if I was making friends. Then he asked me for permission to follow me on Instagram. Of course, I was like, yeah, you can follow me. After that, we basically talked on Instagram almost every single day. He would watch and reply to all of my stories. One time I posted a story of me having dinner with some guy, and he replied right away and asked me if I was on a date. I said yes. Then he told me that he was actually jealous. I didn't know how to reply, so I just said LOL. Then he said, what are we gonna do about this? I told him probably nothing because his wife would get upset. Then he said, I've got my ways, don't worry. He asked me to go to the movies and we went, and we basically made out the entire time. After the movie, we sat in his car and he told me that he hated his wife and that he was planning on divorcing her. He was even crying. I mean, I had to believe him. He asked me to keep everything secret, and of course I said yes. I mean, I didn't want to lose my job. This went on for 2 months. One day he calls me and tells me that his wife actually read our messages. My boss's husband, aka the guy I'm having an affair with, he calls me up to tell me that she actually saw the text messages between us. Luckily, he did not save my number under my name. So basically, she saw messages between him and some other girl. He was really freaking out. But that's when I told him this is your way out. According to him, he hated his wife. So I told him this is perfect, just ask her for a divorce. That's when he told me there was no way he would ever divorce her. He told me that she was the only one who made money in the relationship and that if they ever got divorced, she would leave him nothing. He also told me that he was no longer attracted to her, but that the money was just too good and he had to stay in the relationship. At that point, I started feeling really bad. I was under the impression that he absolutely hated her and that she was terrible towards him, but apparently not. Thankfully, she didn't know it was me, the one that was messaging him. He actually made up a lie and told her it was some girl from Instagram that he met. When I showed up to work later that day, my boss was in a really bad mood, and I knew why. Suddenly, she tells all of us girls to pull out our phones and open our text messages. My stomach dropped because stupid me had not deleted all the messages. She started going one by one checking everyone's phone. But luckily, I was able to delete everything by the time she got to mine. That's when she told us all to go home. As soon as I got in my car, I decided to call him. I told him what had happened and he told me that everything should be under control and that she believes what he said. He asked me if we could meet up and I said yes. I just couldn't resist the temptation. A few days later, I came into work early by mistake. I find him talking to one of the other girls. When he saw me, he literally backed away from her. I instantly got upset and realized that he had probably been having affairs with a bunch of the other girls. I decided to confront the girl that he was talking to and she told me the truth. They had been having an affair for a year now and that he had probably had affairs with all the girls that worked there. No wonder my boss was so paranoid. When I asked him about it, he totally denied it. I kind of want to tell my boss now and just confess everything, but I'd risk losing my job, which pays really well and I actually love. I'm hoping you guys can tell me what to do. Help me.
This is why you should be careful who you befriend. When I was in junior high, I was a friendly and curious person. 1 month into the fall semester, we got a new transfer student. He was seated behind me and his name was Joe. I introduced myself to him trying to ease attention. I showed him what we learned so far and helped him to look over his class schedule. We had 2 classes and lunch together. Naturally, we got to know each other and became friends. He was a quiet kid but talked a lot around me, so I assumed he was just comfortable with me. I made it clear to him that we were just friends and he agreed, so I brought him around my friends and we all started to hang out. Fast forward to spring break, I told Joe that I was going out of town with my family. He seemed disappointed we couldn't spend spring break together but understood. However, while on spring break, I ran into Joe at a restaurant. I didn't tell him where I was going, so I thought to myself, wow, what a coincidence. He said he was visiting family in the same town and I believed him. Then in senior year, Joe and I were hanging out at least 3 times a week. I noticed it was too much and I wanted to make time for my other friends as well. That's when things started to change. I ran into Joe, or should I say saw him in the corner of my eye when I spent time with someone else over myself. He started to become obsessive and clingy. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. However, it all became clear when I questioned him and he said that he accidentally followed me. Once I questioned Joe, he confessed saying that it was because he wanted to make sure I was safe. I felt betrayed and creeped out. He apologized and asked for forgiveness. I told him I didn't want to be friends with him anymore. That's when he got angry and left. The next 2 to 3 days, he didn't come to school. My friends told me that he harassed him for snitching on him. When he came back to school, we pretended like we didn't know each other. On my walk home that day, I heard Joe calling my name in a low and unfamiliar tone, but he was nowhere to be seen. I don't know why, but my gut told me to run as fast as I could. I listened to it and sprinted all the way home. I made sure every door and window was locked. I was convinced that I was being paranoid at this point. Then my phone screen lit up. I looked to see many missed calls from Joe. Then I heard my name being called again. I looked up to see Joe in the front of my house, banging on the door. Everything went completely silent after 5 minutes, which felt like an eternity. The last words I heard from him was, "You'll always be my best friend." This issue was brought up to the school and Joe never showed up again. 4 years have passed since then, and just a few days ago, I got a couple friend requests on my social media accounts. It was him. I blocked him and changed all my social media names into something else. I don't live in that same town anymore, or even the same country. However, I can't help but to feel like the scared 18-year-old me again. I'm not the friendly person I once was, and I've become cautious around other people.
This is why you should always breathe through your nose. In 2009, a Russian man named Artyom Sidorkin started experiencing intense chest pains to the point where he couldn't even stand up. He tried to ignore it, but when he started coughing up blood, he went to the emergency room. They gave him an x-ray, and it revealed a fist-sized tumor growing in his lung. Afterwards, the doctor told Mr. Sidorkin, unfortunately, it looks like cancer. But before they could start removing large chunks of his lung, the doctor needed to do a biopsy to see if it really was cancer. So a terrified Mr. Sidorkin came in a few days later. They performed the biopsy, and the surgeon, as he was looking at the tissue, noticed something. Tucked in the middle of the tissue was a 5-centimeter long fir tree. Mr. Sidorkin was a botanist, and he was a big mouth breather, and at some point while he was working, he managed to inhale a fir tree seed. The doctors told him he didn't have cancer, he had a tree. He was shocked, and he said, "I had no sense that a tree was growing in my lungs." But more than shocked, he was just happy to be cancer-free.
Am I the asshole for making my germaphobe husband change our baby's diaper? My husband and I have a 2-month-old together. He does everything almost except changing diapers. He's a hardcore germaphobe, so I handle the dirty part of our son's care. So my husband's been pestering me about the faces I make when changing our son's diapers, telling me to smile all the time. I told him to leave me alone, and it's easy for him to say when he's not the one dealing with the smell. But every time I'm in the middle of changing diapers, my husband would show up out of nowhere like he busted me or something and tell me that the faces I keep making have an impact on our son's emotional state and I should smile. I told him to leave me alone. He knows how difficult this is for me but does nothing to help. Instead, just mocks me and keeps pestering me. I said if he ever tries to hassle me again with just smile bullcrap, then he'll start handling the diaper changes himself. Last night around 9, he was in the kitchen already eating dinner without me and not waiting while I was getting ready to change my son's diaper. He came into the room with his mouth full of food and once again commented on how my face looked and for me to smile and show love and to stop causing harm to our son's emotional health. I snapped. I walked up to him and told him that he ran out of chance to stop his annoying behavior and he should start handling diaper changes from now on and we'll see how big his smile will be. His tone changed immediately and he said that we both agreed that I'd be the one handling diaper changes even before our son was born and that I already know too well what his reason is. He's a germaphobe, yes, but he's also a parent. What type of parent never changes their baby's diaper? I handed him the stuff and asked him to enjoy it while I kept standing to watch how he would do it. It took him forever. As I expected, he made all types of disgusted, gross-out faces, and for a minute I thought he was going to throw up. When he was finished, I told him he lost the smiling contest with those faces he made. He was pissed and rushed to wash his hands, complaining about how I'm trying to get him to do everything, and that I ruined his appetite by having him experience that. I replied and said he hasn't seen anything yet, and asked since he wants us to have 4 kids, how he will be handling the other 3. He said he changed his mind and only wants 2. But still, my point stands. He tried to argue that I'm not taking his germophobia seriously and what I forced him to do wasn't cool. He's been upset since then and has given me the silent treatment. So, am I the asshole?
Someone thought they were actually going to shame me about something, about a choice. I don't have any shame. And there's multiple reasons, but there's a main reason. My right ear, I don't hear as well out of it as I do my left ear. And that's because in high school, there was a circumstance which ended up with another gal's thighs against my head. And through the same circumstances, they were kind of wet. They had moisture on them. But also in that circumstance, something took place that caused a very rapid squeezing and a moving, and it actually damaged my eardrum on that side. The song she was playing was Fight for All the Wrong Reasons by Nickelback. So I have no shame, because the last thing that I heard on this earth with perfect clarity was a fucking Nickelback song. So I'll be damned if you try to say something to me about being an accountant.
So you know when you're doing your business with your girlfriend and you clean up? One time I forgot to and it ended up horribly. So me and my girlfriend were going to see a movie one night and when we got there the ads were still playing. So she decided that she wanted to go to the bathroom and yeah. And I'm an adrenaline junkie for that kind of stuff in public so I couldn't turn it down. But in the bathroom we could still hear the echo from the movie. And once we got finished we had noticed that it already started. We were in such a rush that her and I both forgot to clean up. So we get into the movie theater and it is absolutely packed. And it took me a couple of minutes to find a seat. A singular seat left, meaning she had to sit on my lap. And everything was pretty normal throughout the movie until it was over. They turned on the lights as the movie was ending and we decided to leave. Well, my girl was wearing a skirt. I looked down at my pants as I got up to leave and I noticed that there was stuff all over me. And I knew what it was. And when I look up, everyone is looking at me and laughing. And as me and my girl are leaving the theater, a group of girls and guys come up to us. What they did embarrassed me for life. Like and follow for part 2. Part 2 is up right now. Just click the link in my bio and download the app. Then search up my name and it's the first thing that pops up. The story title is Movies Part 2. But it's a different title in the actual video. Anyway, I post all my part 2s early on that app because I honestly just like it better. As well as stories that I don't post on here and other exclusive content. It's a social networking app where you can talk to other people and watch streamers while you're there. It's super cool. But if you don't feel like doing that, don't worry, part 2 will be up on TikTok tomorrow. Thanks you guys, I love you and I hope you have a great day.
This is why you should never eat a cult's applesauce. During his stay in a psych ward in the 1970s, Marshall Applewhite formed an intense, non-romantic relationship with his nurse, Bonnie Nettles. They quickly realized aliens had preordained their encounter, and now they needed to board their spacecraft once the aliens came back to Earth to give them the signal. The pair formed a cult called Heaven's Gate, and they recruited people by telling them if they missed this one UFO ride, they would be destroyed when the Earth was inevitably recycled. Their cult was considered a joke and not a threat until they did something so horrific it shocked the world. On March 26, 1997, the aliens were going to be passing overhead, hiding behind a comet, and it was now time for the members to hop on board. Over the course of 3 days, members donned matching Nike sneakers, ate poisoned applesauce, tied bags over their head, and then waited to exit the Earth. Right before they died, they conducted exit interviews, and they are truly disturbing. To see these interviews and learn more about the cult of cults, check out Heaven's Gate on HBO Max, link is in my bio. This is why you should never step foot on the faraway dock. In 1994, an 11-year-old named Mark arrived